My guest tonight is an EGOT-winning multi-platinum artist and activist who hosts the new original audio documentary, Afghan Star. Please welcome John Legend.
Thank you for coming. Good to see you. You all right? Yeah. Whoa. Here we go. What's up?
EGOT-winning, multi-platinum. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to see your name on audio documentary Afghan Star.
Yeah, I'm a podcast host now. My biggest aspiration finally come to life.
Tell me about this new project and how did you get involved?
Afghan Star is the name of a competition show, so it's like American Idol or The Voice, but the revolutionary fact was that it was in Afghanistan.
Yes.
And prior to the U.S. invasion, the Taliban was in charge, and they had basically outlawed music in the country. So literally they would have bonfires, burn CDs and records and musical instruments. And so there was a whole generation of people that were growing up not having access to the most basic thing that we all love, that's a part of all of our lives, music. And so when the Taliban was deposed and there was this new freedom that was permeating through the country, one of the producers there who had started this network called Tolo TV, he decided to start a singing competition show, and he had no idea how revolutionary it would be, because not only was it displaying music on television, but it was giving women opportunities that they never had before. It was challenging a lot of the societal norms and some of the religious strictures that have been on the country for a long time. And it was quite a cultural moment that impacted the entire country.
I mean, you talk about in the podcast how the Taliban used to stop people's cars, and if there was a cassette tape in there, they would beat up the driver and then rip up the cassette tape and hang it from a tree as like a trophy.
They would unspool the actual tape from the cassette and hang it up so people would know you can't have this.
As an American, I listen to this stuff. It almost seems fictitious. It's never even, I mean, this is how spoiled I am. It's never crossed my mind that people cannot have music. Is your approach to music any differently now knowing that? Is your approach to music now any different knowing that?
Well, I always knew music was such a gift, but I think you can take it for granted because it's something that's just part of your lives. And, you know, we've had it as part of our culture forever. And every country's pretty much had it as a part of their culture forever. But to have it taken away is quite a thing. And to see the lengths people went through to get music back into their lives, the underground networks that they would have to use to smuggle in records that they want to listen to, the parties they would have with live music out of the reach of the government and police. All of these things just shows you how important music is to our lives and how meaningful it can be. And to see it taken away makes you really appreciate it.
It's almost like the Taliban hasn't seen Footloose.
I know. Exactly.
Yo, what do you think?
You gotta watch Footloose.
They're still gonna do music.
And you know what's happened since the Taliban's back in charge again. So you know you would think maybe there is no music again in Afghanistan, but once you let the genie out of the bottle, it's really hard to suppress the people's desire to get music. And now with the internet being more prevalent and everyone kind of getting used to the fact that music was in their lives, it's kind of hard for the Taliban to stop them from listening to music now.
One of my favorite parts in the pod was when he decides to have auditions and he's like, is anybody going to show up? Oh my God. And then he gets to this hotel and security's furious at him because there's hundreds of people there.
Everybody wanted to be part of it.
But then he starts rolling cameras and he's like, guess what? Everybody's a bad singer. And he's like, which wasn't the case. There was good singers, but there's also a lot of bad singing, too.
Sure.
As there is everywhere.
You have to go through the audition process.
Exactly.
You know, it showed a lot of things because one of the things that Afghanistan hadn't done was vote for anything. And so this was like an opportunity for them to vote.
That's crazy.
And they were like,
I'm laughing at this, but it's like, holy shit, another thing Americans just...
We take for granted.
You know, it's like, vote, motherfuckers. You know what I mean? It's like, let's talk. And another thing, I mean, let's talk about the role of women in Afghanistan. This was such a groundbreaking cultural change for them.
Yeah, so one of the most controversial things at the beginning of the show was when a woman was performing on the show and she started dancing just a little bit, a little shimmy, and they were very upset about that. And then her hijab starts to sneak back a little bit. You see a little bit of her hair, and these are norms that had been enforced. With the gun, with the threat of death. And so the fact that people were doing this on national television was quite daring. And then we had a judge named Ariana Saeed, who was a pop star, and she was very well known in Afghanistan, and she became a judge, and her life was under threat all the time because she was a symbol of women's liberation just by the fact that she was there as a judge, and she actually mentored a few of the female contestants, and one of them finally won after several years of the show being on the air. And it was quite a moment for women in Afghanistan to have access to this. And one of the things that we are doing with our fundraiser, with the art sale that we're doing, is making sure we raise money for the Noor Foundation in Afghanistan, which makes sure women have access to education and all the things they need.
And there's some unique pieces of art per episode. There's art created or something?
Yes, so we have unique pieces of art. I've signed some of them. And each of them represents stories from the episodes. And so they're very vivid and beautiful, and people can check them out.
Cool. It's nice to have you here in New York. I mean, Trump's in the Bronx today. I was wondering, is that why you're here? You're politically outspoken.
I feel like he would be here a lot of days nowadays.
That's right.
I think he has to be.
It's true. How are you feeling this election? I mean, you're politically outspoken. What can people be doing? What should people be doing?
Well, of course they should vote, and I'll be voting for Joe Biden. I think it's a clear choice. It's a clear choice, and we talk about things we take for granted, but there is one candidate that isn't too keen on democracy, isn't too keen on us having the right to vote. He literally tried to steal an election and nullify the votes of the American people, and I feel like that is utterly disqualifying, and he should not ever be anywhere close to the nuclear codes, the White House, the Oval Office, and I'm going to do my best to make sure he doesn't get back there.
I appreciate you chatting with me. Thank you very much.
You.
John Legend, everybody.